In this video, I'm going to show you how to shoot both the Milky Way and sunrise in the same night. It might seem like such a logical progression from shooting the Milky Way to sunrise, but the truth is you actually want two different sets of circumstances. When you're shooting the Milky Way, well, there's a ton of things you need to watch out for, we'll get to that in a moment, but you also want to make sure that there's clear skies. When you're shooting sunrise, ideally there's some clouds in the sky. Now, we as photographers have to make do with what Mother Nature provides us. If there's no clouds, but we've only got one chance to take a shot, well, that's just what we have to make do with. The photos I'm about to show you were from a trip to Jordan that I made recently, and we're in the Wadi Rum desert. We're only spending one night in the desert, so we have to make the most of it. The process to shooting the Milky Way actually starts with planning weeks in advance. We booked our trip to Jordan and we checked a moon app on my phone. I used Deluxe Moon and it tells me where the moon is going to be in the sky based on my location. And I could tell many weeks in advance that for the dates that we were staying in Jordan, we wanted to go and see the Milky Way at the beginning of our trip rather than at the end. One big thing about shooting the Milky Way is you can't have any moon in the sky. The moon acts like a big bright light and it blows out all definition in the stars. So that's one thing you need to be sure to avoid. So we made sure that we were arriving at a time where there wasn't going to be a strong moon and we'd be able to see the stars. So we got to our campsite and I spoke with the man that we were staying with and I said, look, we want to capture the Milky Way, but pulled it up on my phone and I was using the Photo Pills app here. Brilliant app, thoroughly recommend it. And I used the augmented reality tool and I could see that actually the Milky Way was going to be rising directly behind the mountain we were sitting in front of. And that's a bummer because I didn't book the campsite and I didn't know which way we'd be facing and I didn't really know anything about it. So actually getting in and seeing our location and finding we were in the wrong location to capture the Milky Way was a little bit disappointing. But we booked a 4x4. The 4x4 wasn't with us in the desert, but he was kind enough to go back to his office area just outside the desert in the national park entrance area, pick up our 4x4 and bring it to us. So at about 3:30 in the morning, my girlfriend and I got out of bed and we got in the 4x4 and we went for a drive. Now it's a sandy desert dune, it's not easy to get around, but we were able to drive for about 15 minutes until we found a location that looks like this. We thought, well, if we go over there, I can sort of see by looking on Google Maps where the mountains are, and there's topographical information, so you can see where there's going to be mountains. And I could see quite clearly, okay, I need to face, I believe it was south, it was mostly east, but southeast, east. I needed to be facing in that direction, so we found a location where we'd get that gap through, and this is what we saw. So I'm going to press L twice here in Lightroom so I can kind of highlight it a little bit more for you. A little bit disappointing still. So we got back in the 4x4 and we kept driving until we got a better and better view, until we got to this location here, and this was about the best we were going to be able to find. So a couple of things to note here is we wanted something with some interesting foreground. I didn't want to just have a flat line. So we managed to get some rock formations, not that interesting, I'll be the first to admit, but we didn't have any chance to location scout. So I was quite pleased we were able to find something. And the second thing is that we're shooting in February. During February in the Northern Hemisphere, the Milky Way is only just starting to crest over the horizon very, very late into the night, just before the sun is rising, which is when we shot this. This was taken maybe 30 minutes before astronomical dawn, which is when the stars are going to start to lose their definition. So we were able to capture this, but it wasn't as spectacular as you might expect to see if you went back in March or April. If you shoot April in the Northern Hemisphere, you're going to get this amazing arch of the Milky Way. And that's when you're going to start to see some really great shots. But we made do with what we had. And I also cropped the photo in a little bit in later photos to give more emphasis on the Milky Way. So that's shooting the Milky Way. Let me go through my settings now. I was shooting at 14mm, f2.8 for 30 seconds, manual focus to infinity. That's pretty much the settings I use for all of my Milky Way photography, unless I'm using a different camera. So let's say a different lens. If I'm using the 24-70 here, well, I can't shoot for 30 seconds because I'm going to start to see motion blur in the stars. So instead, I change this to, I think it's about 20 seconds instead. With those settings, I'm able to consistently get great photos of the Milky Way. And you can see as I start to enhance it with some very easy and simple processing in Lightroom, you can start to see that you get much better results and definition. I think this was my final shot. You can see how the Milky Way appears to sort of rise in the sky. It's not rising, the Earth's obviously just rotating. But we were able to get a pretty decent shot from that night. And you can see here, this was the last photo I took before astronomical dawn and the stars start to lose their definition. We've shot the Milky Way now and it's time to shoot sunrise. So the difference between astronomical dawn, which is when the stars lose their definition, to actual dawn, I think it's a couple hours when we were actually shooting it in February. You've got to remember we have very long nights in winter, so it's a couple hours before we can actually shoot the sun rising. And in that time, we got in the Jeep and we drove around until we found a good location for the sunrise. We took a little bit of advice from the guy we were staying with, but ultimately I don't think we found a fantastic location, and we didn't have great weather for it either. Some wispy clouds would have turned to a beautiful pink color at sunrise, but we made do with what we could. So driving along here, you can see this is the desert that we're driving through. It's fantastic definition, like the texture, the colors, the sky, it's all beautiful, but it didn't make for amazing sunrise yet. But this is all about making do with what you have available. I can't come back. We're here for one night only. I've got to get the best that I can from this shoot, and I'm actually really pleased with what I managed to get. So you can see we were waiting a little bit for the sun to rise. You can see it's cropping up here now at the top of the little mountain. I don't know what you call this, a rock formation, I guess. It's starting to creep up, and I'm getting some photos, but I'm paying attention to what's going on around me. And I can start to see that some camels, actually I have to give my girlfriend some credit here, she did point them out to me, but I can start to see some camels are walking across the scene. So I got in the Jeep, or rather the Mitsubishi, and I drove closer, jumped out, and then it's just me running around in the desert on my own while she's bundled up in the car in a blanket. It's so cold. And this is actually where we started to get some of our best photos. The great thing about shooting sunrise is it's a really soft light. The sun's really low in the sky, and you get this nice glow and soft shadows. When the sun is right above you, there's no shadows anymore. There's just this harsh light that's really, really strong. When it's low in the sky, even when it starts to be quite bright, you can see it's quite bright on the right-hand side of this rock formation. Even that's quite bright, but the rest of the scene, you can see it's starting to creep across the foreground here. That adds for a really nice dynamic scene. And we've got some nice purple, we've got some green, and some of the lighter sand over here. So I was really pleased to be able to find a scene like this. And I'm going to show you some of the photos that I got here. I believe there were 7 camels, and in one of these photos, I think you can see there's a 7th one over here. In one of these photos I even cloned one of them out because it was annoying my composition. With this scene, the light's constantly changing, the camels are moving, they're looking in different directions. Everything's moving and changing in this scene, so you can continue to take photos during the sunrise until you get a photo you're happy with. I really like this photo because you get a very clear scene of the shape of this camel, and a camel in a desert is obviously a very iconic shape. So it's something I was looking for, and I also wanted one to look at me, but there's not, I can't control what these camels are doing. I can just make do with what is available to me. And I also really love the shape of this rock formation. I like the balance of it being stronger on the left-hand side of the frame, but on the right-hand side of the frame, you have this really bright orange scene, which is also carrying a stronger visual weight. So there's this tension, but it's balanced quite well. And then you have a line of camels in the foreground, just along here, that are adding some strength and stability of that horizontal line. I thought it made for a great photo. I think this is actually one where I cropped, or I cloned out a camel. Let's put it into develop and find out. Yeah, you can see I actually got rid of it here. There you go. Put that back. I personally don't have issues with removing scenes that elements that I find distracting in a scene. Some people have different opinions about that, but I was quite happy to do this. You know, I'm not publishing this in National Geographic. No one's going to come up and tell me off and tell me it's not a proper photograph because I removed an element. This is a photo for me to enjoy. You know, I might post it on my Instagram, but I'm really bad at posting on social media anyway. So this is just for me to enjoy, and I thought it looked better without that camel there. So that's what I did. And you can see I shot a few more, but I think that was probably my best photo of that sunrise. This one's good too. In fact, I really like this, but I think this is just that point where a little bit too much sun had reached the scene. And you can see there's too much of a glow on the camel over here. The light's not that soft anymore. And I think by this point, the moment had passed. So this was my favorite photo from sunrise. And this was my favorite photo of the Milky Way during the night. Two very different approaches, looking for two different things in the scenes when it comes to weather and conditions. But ultimately, getting up at 4 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, getting in a Jeep in the freezing cold, driving out, trying to find a location, fingers are freezing off because you have to get your gloves off and adjust the camera controls. It's all hard work, but there's nothing that I enjoy more than being satisfied with some great photos. It's one of the most rewarding types of photography I've ever done, Milky Way photography, because every time you shoot, so long as the conditions are good and you've planned it well, you're going to get a great photo you're proud of. And when you look back on it, you don't remember how cold you were or how tired you were. You just remember having a great time and getting an awesome photo, because I have like a little jump for joy whenever I get a great photo of the Milky Way. And if I can pair that up with a beautiful sunrise photo in a scene with someone I really care for, I want to have memories with, it really just makes for a great trip and a great memory. So that's how I shoot the Milky Way and sunrise in the same night. And here's a final photo. This is us just 10 minutes later. Once the sun had come up in the scene, we decided, all right, well, no more photos because the light isn't good anymore, but we can still take photos of the Jeep, we can drive around, we can take photos of ourselves, and very happy with how those photos came out. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be producing a video like this once a week, along with some other extra videos on this YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this kind of content, you can expect more to be coming your way soon. If you'd like to see it, go ahead and click subscribe below. Thanks for watching.